She was forced to marry at 14 by her uncle, but what she became 15 years later shocked everyone. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments so I can send some love to you. The rain had barely dried on the family compound in Enugu when the mourners dispersed. Olivia sat at the corner of the empty living room, her tiny hands wrapped around the framed photo of her parents, her only treasure now. She was just 14, the only child of Mr. and Mrs. Chidi Ume, a well-to-do couple who died in a tragic accident on their way back from a wedding in Akka. The accident made the news. Their SUV collided with a trailer. No survivors. Now everything felt like a blur. Days of condolences had ended. The house that once overflowed with laughter was now heavy with silence. Olivia looked up as her uncle, Chief Okafor, entered. He was in his early 50s, slightly chubby, with a constant scent of tobacco and camphor. "Olivia," he said gently, "get up. You can't stay here alone." She didn't move. Her eyes were red from days of crying, her hair uncombed. "This is my home," she whispered. "Daddy built it for me and Mommy." Chief Okafor exhaled and squatted beside her. "I know, my dear, but you're just a child. You can't manage things here alone. Your safety comes first." The following day, with only one traveling bag, Olivia was driven away from her childhood home. "I'll take good care of her," Chief Okafor said to the few remaining neighbors who watched with quiet pity. "She's like a daughter to me." But Chief Okafor's intentions were never pure. A week before the burial, he had contacted a land agent and begun processing the sale of the mansion. The papers had been forged, Olivia's signature faked. Within days of their move to the village, the house was sold off for millions. Olivia's new home was a modest mud house in the remote village of Omuchikuku in Abia State. No electricity, no running water, no privacy, and no comfort. "Uncle, when are we going back to Enugu?" she asked one evening after washing his clothes. Chief Okafor didn't answer immediately. He was sipping palm wine under the mango tree, eyes squinting at the horizon. "You're not going back," he said eventually. "You'll get used to life here." She froze. "But my school? My room? Mommy's piano?" "School won't feed you, and that room is no longer yours." Tears welled in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "You'll understand soon," he said curtly and waved her off. Days later, she understood. A white canopy was being erected in the village square. Women were singing and dancing. The village gossip, Mama Chinwe, stopped by and rubbed Olivia's head. "Congratulations, Nwanye Oma," she smiled. "You'll enjoy Chief Agu's house. He takes care of his wives." Olivia blinked. "Wives?" Mama Chinwe laughed. "Yes now, you'll be number 7. Don't worry, you'll grow into it." When she ran to her uncle for an explanation, he slapped her. "Do you think feeding you is free? Do you think I'm your father? This marriage is for your own good. Chief Agu is rich. You'll live well." "I'm only 14, she cried. "And you're ripe enough. Don't disgrace me, Olivia." She tried running. She pleaded. She begged the village priest. No one helped. They feared Chief Agu, an influential man in his 60s who had everything but sons. His other wives had all disappointed him in one way or another. On the morning of the wedding, Olivia wore a borrowed lace blouse and wrapper. Her face was painted with makeup she didn't want. A crowd gathered. The drums beat. She was forced to kneel beside Chief Agu, who beamed proudly. Her hands trembled. She stared blankly at the crowd, wondering if her parents were watching from the afterlife. When Chief Agu placed the wine cup in her hands for her to serve him, she did not move. Her body refused. Chief Okafor whispered sharply behind her, "Serve your husband now!" Tears spilled down her face as she moved slowly, mechanically, and handed the cup to Chief Agu. The crowd erupted in cheer. That night, in a room filled with strange tribal masks and thick rugs, Olivia sat in a corner as Chief Agu prepared for bed. "I will be patient," he said, removing his wrapper. "You're young, but you'll learn." She turned away, curling into a ball. Her childhood had ended. No one came to save her. By the time Olivia turned 15, her life had already become a painful blur of rituals, chores, and shadows. As Chief Agu's seventh wife, she was nothing more than a symbol of power for the old man, an accessory to boast of among his peers, and a child to control within the walls of his mansion. The compound was large and cold, with tall iron gates that seemed to scream no escape. The older wives never hid their hatred. They saw Olivia as an intrusion, a joke forced into their ranks. Mama Nkechi, the first wife, always found reasons to shout at her. "You no even fit sweep this veranda well? Not so your mama train you?" She would bark, arms folded, staring down at Olivia like she was dirt. "I'm sorry, Ma," Olivia would mutter, her head bowed. "Sorry? You go chop sorry?" the second wife would hiss, slapping a tray of cassava leaves into her hands. When she wasn't being shouted at or insulted, Olivia was running errands, fetching water, washing clothes, pounding yam for Chief Agu, and kneeling for hours as the older wives passed instructions back and forth like orders in a military camp. But the worst part was the nights. Olivia's small body was forced to share a bed with a man older than her own father. Chief Agu, with his gray beard and tobacco-stained breath, would grunt beside her, commanding her to lie still and obey. She would shut her eyes, grip the edge of the mattress, and pray for morning. No one helped her. In the village, Chief Agu was powerful. His name brought both fear and respect. Even the elders wouldn't dare question his choices. People looked away when Olivia passed. Some even chuckled as if her fate was entertainment. One day, after a particularly brutal scolding from the third wife, Olivia sat alone under the mango tree behind the main hut. Her chest burned, not from the slap she'd received earlier, but from the helplessness she carried every day. She reached for the little cloth bundle she always hid beneath a rock nearby. Inside it was an old, faded notebook, the only thing she had left from her mother. On the first page, written in her mother's delicate handwriting, were the words, "To my sunshine, Olivia, you are more than your pain." Olivia clutched the book to her chest and began to cry silently. Then she opened to a fresh page and began to write. "I feel like I am drowning. Every day I shrink more. But I will not disappear. One day they will know I was here." She wrote whenever she could, under the moonlight, while waiting at the stream, or in stolen moments when everyone else napped. The notebook became her safe place. She scribbled dreams, thoughts, prayers, and even ideas for clothes she would design if she ever had a sewing machine. A year later, while waiting outside the palace for her next task, she met Mr. Eze, a retired teacher who lived 2 compounds away. He noticed the curiosity in her eyes as he flipped through a book. "Do you like books?" he asked. "I want to read better," she whispered, eyes cast down. From that day, Mr. Eze began to lend her books, simple ones at first, folktales, old newspapers, a torn English textbook. Olivia would sneak them into her bundle and study them by lantern light late into the night. She improved quickly. By 18, she could write clearly, speak fluently, and even correct the wives when they mispronounced words. But she didn't stop there. She taught herself to sew using scraps of cloth discarded by the wives. She would shape small patterns, practicing stitches again and again. Her hands became skilled. Soon, even the wives began to notice. "Who sewed this wrapper like this?" the fourth wife once asked, admiring the neatness of her blouse. "Olivia did it," another replied, frowning in jealousy. Chief Agu's relatives began to send little fabrics to her through the back door, asking for mending. She charged nothing, but she was watching, learning, and building her name quietly. At 20, Olivia was no longer the timid girl they had slapped around. She was still trapped, yes, but her eyes now burned with silent fire. She had a plan. 4 years later, it happened. A terrible fire broke out during one of the chief's drunken parties. There was panic, confusion, and screams everywhere. While others struggled to put out the flames, Olivia slipped out of the compound through the rear gates. She didn't stop running until she reached the main road. That same night, with the little money she had saved, she boarded a rickety bus heading to Lagos with only a nylon bag, her mother's notebook, and the clothes on her body. What lay ahead was unknown, but for the first time in 10 years, Olivia had taken control. By the time Olivia's bus rattled and coughed into the outskirts of Lagos, the sky had turned a deep charcoal gray. The dusty road shimmered with the residue of the day's heat, but the night air was cooler, heavy with a thick scent of exhaust fumes and damp concrete. The long journey from the east had drained her. The bus had broken down 3 different times, once due to a flat tire, once because the fuel finished without warning, and the last time because the old rickety vehicle simply gave up halfway through Ogun State. Olivia hadn't eaten all day. Her legs ached, and the few items she had managed to stuff into her bag, 2 wrapper clothes, her mother's worn notebook, and a sewing kit, were clutched tightly to her chest. She stepped down at Jibowu Park around 11:45 p.m., unsure of where to turn next. People bustled around her, tired travelers dragging their belongings. Some had families waiting. Others quickly bargained with taxi drivers. Olivia stood still. She didn't know anyone in Lagos. Her uncle had never let her travel outside the village in all the years she had been married to Chief Agu. Her world had been the compound walls, the kitchen fire, and the quiet hours with her notebook. Lagos felt like another planet. Bright lights, honking Danfo buses, yelling conductors, music blaring from roadside shops, all of it overwhelmed her senses. A soft breeze blew past her as a group of women walked by, laughing. Olivia watched them disappear into the night. She sat on a broken cement ledge near a kiosk that was already locked for the night, her back hunched from exhaustion. She fought the tears that gathered in her eyes. For the first time in years, she was free. But for the first time also, she was truly alone. "Madame, you dey wait person?" A man's voice startled her. She looked up to see a motorcyclist adjusting his helmet. "No, I don't know where to go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The man shrugged. "Try dey careful, lo. Night no too safe for this area." He sped off. She looked left and right, hoping to find a safe place to rest her head. Then, like a flicker of grace in her darkest moments, she saw a faint blue and white sign across the road. It read, "Christ's Redeeming Voice Ministry, Night Vigil in Progress." Music flowed from the building, soft, worshipful tunes, accompanied by a woman's voice singing a hymn in Yoruba. There was no gate, just an open field leading to a low building lit by generator-powered bulbs. People were seated inside, some on plastic chairs, some on mats. The doors were wide open. Olivia gathered her bag and crossed the road carefully. Inside, she sat quietly at the far corner near a window, where the breeze passed through. Nobody asked her any questions. A few people glanced at her dusty face and tired eyes, but most were caught up in prayer. Someone eventually came around and handed her a bottle of water and a bread roll. She muttered, "Thank you," and took tiny bites, tears escaping her eyes as she swallowed. The voices in prayer began to swell. A preacher in a white shirt walked to the altar and began to preach passionately about restoration and new beginnings. She didn't hear most of it. Her body was too tired, her eyes too heavy. She laid her head on the wooden bench, her hands still clutching her bag, and drifted off into the first peaceful sleep she had known in years. As dawn began to break, a soft orange light spilling across the horizon, Olivia stirred slightly, wrapped in her thin shawl. Something inside her, like a sleeping seed, began to stir too. A whisper, a faint reminder from the pages of her mother's notebook. "You are not what they said you are. You are who God made you to be." She didn't know what tomorrow held, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. Not of Lagos, not of starting over, and not of becoming who she was always meant to be.